David versus Goliath, Rocky Balboa, the Miracle on Ice 1980 hockey team, all are great examples of underdogs finding their way to winning a fight. I wonder if that's what Canyon had in mind when they made this bike. This is the Canyon Strive on CFR Underdog. It's a value-driven enduro bike equipped with all the necessities for taking on some of the big boys in the eMTB world. It's got an awesome carbon frame, slack geo, and one of the most lauded motors out on the market. All those essentials from a DTC brand make it one of the best value eMTBs out there today. Now, does this scrappy underdog truly hang with the daunting competition? Let's find out in this review. Hey there, e-bike friends, Griffin here, and welcome once again to Electric Bike Report. Or if this is your first time here, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We have reviews coming out every week, and we also have some shows that follow industry news and the best finds in the world of e-bikes. For those who may not already know, the quick background on Canyon is that this is a German-based company well known for making high-quality products. They use a direct-to-consumer model, and as such, they are frequently considered one of the best values for your money. Now, the Strive on here is no different. Let me talk about its main highlights before we run through all of its spec sheet. So first up, this thing delivers terrifically on the essentials. Now, there's a lot that you can upgrade on an e-bike, but when you make a purchase, you're actually locked into the frame and by extension, its geometry, the motor, and the battery. Technically, there are tweaks that can be made to geo and battery in some instances, but you know what I mean. Those are the things you can't really just swap out. Canyon has a well-earned reputation for its carbon frames, and the Strive on CFR is a well-crafted ride. The geometry is pretty slack in the head tube and steep on the seat tube, and overall, it's a large-feeling bike that feels well-planted and stable. The weight distribution feels good without being top-heavy, and they largely balanced out the front and back weight. It's a lot of fun to ride if you're a fan of downhill enduro riding, thanks to its long wheelbase that lends to that stable feel. Now, next up is the Bosch ecosystem. This bike comes with the Gen 4 Bosch Performance Line CX. It multiplies a rider's power up to 340% with its 250 watts of nominal power and 600 watts of peak power, all with 85 Newton meters of torque. Pound for pound, it's one of the better motors found on mid and higher tier e-bikes. It's a system with a bit of noise to it, but that noise is just proof that it's doing some work. It is super useful on climbs and can easily help a rider gain speed. Now, this ride also has a 160-170 Fox suspension setup, and the linkage gives it really nice support. It has a predictable feel that does well on these long travel bikes. It's supportive and reliable when climbing or ripping downhill. Finally, let's bring it back full circle and talk value. Again, the frame and motor are terrific. From there, the remaining parts are more of a mid-tier value. They work great on the trails and provide you with what you need to hang with higher price setups while keeping the total cost reasonable. Overall, its MSRP is $5,799. With all this bike has to offer, you'd likely be looking at something closer to $7,000 from a non-DTC brand, so you have to love the savings that you're looking at there. And if you do want the more premium build, the Strive On comes in the LTD model for a few grand more with upgraded components all over. The Gen 4 Bosch Performance Line CX motor has been a mainstay on the list of best eMTB motors for a while now. It's known for several good things and one fairly small downside. So first, the good. It has 250 watts of nominal power with a 600 watt peak. Those figures help it to gather speed quickly, and the 85 Newton meters of torque helps propel you up hills. This system is designed to boost you up to 340% of the rider's effort level, so when you're fully maxed out, it makes light work of things. The motor has a slight overrun that helps propel you for just a small moment when you stop pedaling. Now, why does it do that? Well, it becomes useful when trying to finish out technical climbs. It keeps you going right to the very end, and it can help you clear any remaining obstacle on your way as you try to pull up your front end up over the crest of a hill. The motor comes with 4 different assist levels: Eco, Tour Plus, eMTB, and Turbo. eMTB mode is an adaptive mode. It syncs up with your effort level to give you a small boost when you're moving casually and a lot of boost when you're really torquing down on the cranks. The remaining 3 modes serve as low, medium, and high options. Now, I personally stuck to low and medium for most of my riding and busted out the high setting on the really steep sections or when I wanted to build up additional speed into a jump. I thought the auto eMTB mode worked pretty well, but I'm a stickler for total control, so I manually adjust it as needed. The only downside to the motor is the noise. The CX has an infamous rattle that can be heard, especially when bombing downhill over the rough stuff. I found it less bothersome once I got used to it, but it's a known trade-off of the Gen 4 motor. Now, as it turns out, Bosch recently released a Gen 5 edition of this motor, and we're hoping it eliminates that issue. The battery is also from Bosch, and so it integrates into the ecosystem nicely. It's a fairly efficient battery, as we'll cover in the range test, but I love that it can be built upon. If the 625 or 750 watt-hour pack doesn't sound like enough juice, you can get Bosch's PowerMore range extender for a few $100s more to extend the ride by another 250 watt-hours, which would be about 40% more on the model that we tested. One nice thing about the Bosch ecosystem is that it is fairly minimal, but you have the option to expand it into something more. The Strive On uses Bosch's top tube display, which is a set of LED lights that will let you know your PAS level and your remaining battery. The battery has 5 bars that change colors to signify when an increment is half spent. That means you can see the battery dwindle 10% at a time, which is good enough for an at-a-glance estimate of your remaining battery life. The color that outlines the display ties into which PAS you're riding in. Green means Eco, blue means Tour Plus, purple means eMTB, and red means Turbo. While I'm not personally one for large displays on an eMTB, you do have the option of turning your phone into a display that will give you more of the nitty-gritty details like your speedometer, odometer, percentage remaining on the battery life, and more. This is made possible with the Bosch Flow app. The app also has some nice customization options. I think the majority of people will appreciate the motor's out-of-the-box settings, but still, you can tailor the power level, how much torque you get, pedal sensitivity, and more in the app's tuning features. I played around with it, but found myself setting everything back to standard as that rode really well. A great benefit about the app is that it can receive OTA updates, so Bosch can make improvements to the ride over time. Now, I love connected systems as it helps prolong the usefulness of your bike and stave off feeling like your ride is out of date. One of the essential questions of any e-bike: how far will it go? Well, we conducted a range test to find out. Now, let me get a large caveat out of the way. We can't control all of the variables that affect range. That list goes a long way, but we control as many factors as we can. Our range test is done on the same course with riders of similar weights and skill levels, and we do the whole thing on the highest PAS level possible to answer what the least amount of miles are that you can expect out of a ride based on a full charge. The Canyon Strive On had one of the best showings that we've actually seen all year. It went 25.32 miles until the battery gave out. That's one of the longer results that we've seen, which is great from a high power motor. It gave a few more miles of ride time than many of the other 750 and 800 watt-hour batteries that we've tested there. Now remember, that's 25 miles when pushing full power the whole time. And that's going to be a little excessive on most single track, and most riding is done with low to medium power usage, or at the very least, a healthy mix. Your mileage may vary, but it will likely be more miles than what we got. As I mentioned before, you do have the option to add on Bosch's range extender, which according to the math should add on another 10 miles with high power and even more with mixed power use. All e-bikes benefit from motors, but enduro rides especially. Traditional enduro bikes aren't known for being fun to pedal uphill, where the long travel and slacked out designs are things that you actually have to fight against. But with motor power at the cranks, those obstacles aren't nearly as daunting. But just like we answer the question about range and how far an e-bike can go, we also want to answer how each bike does on hill climbs, and for that, we have 2 different standardized hill tests. Now first up is our infamous Hellhole Trail hill climb. Every bike our channel reviews goes to this paved trail, which is a 1/3 of a mile long and has a steep 12% average grade. Then we take eMTBs like the Strive On here to our Water Tower hill climb. It's a longer 0.86 mile stretch on a dirt trail with a 5.5% grade. And we have Justin do both of these tests each time to keep things consistent. Let's take it out to him and see how it did.
We are out at Hellhole doing the pedal test with the Canyon Strive On. It's equipped with the Bosch Performance CX line motor. It's the older version now, since they just came out with a new one. So I've done a couple of these motors, expect pretty decent results, but we'll see. So far, kind of out of the gate, again, feels good. You do hear the motor like you do on all kind of those Bosch Performance CXs. And the new one is supposed to be quieter, but this one you still do hear it. I'll let you listen here. Yeah, so you can hear that whine. This is the last little punchy section. I'll let you hear the difference. Yeah, so it's there, but the motor feels powerful, feels nice and responsive. And to be honest, that noise kind of just fades away into the background. So I have a feeling there's going to be quite a few bikes still with these motors on, and it's still a really good motor. We'll let the results, you know, speak for themselves. But as we finish up here, I have a feeling they'll be pretty good. It felt really nice. We are out on the hill of the water tower climb test with the Canyon Strive On. Now this has the older generation of the Bosch Performance CX line, and we've tested bikes with this motor a few times. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to climb for a few minutes, let you listen to kind of the motor, how it sounds, and then I'll give you some feedback, you know, kind of towards the top of this climb. So with that being said, let's do it. Okay, so when I put a little bit of time on this bike and the motor, I'll say I do really like the improvements on the new Bosch motors, the SX, the Race, and the new Performance CX. They're a little quieter than this one. This one still feels pretty peppy. Still feels pretty good. Yeah, you can hear it. It's a little bit louder. For me, that still kind of ends up drifting into the background. I still do find that I prefer a slightly higher cadence on these types of climbs with the Bosch. If you get that cadence right, it feels great. And they just feel punchy, lots of fun. I think this will be a pretty good result. It's not gonna beat the race motor, obviously, but it's gonna be pretty good, I think. So we'll go to the tape, we'll check it out. But in general, I'm still a pretty big fan of this motor and just the overall feel while riding on the Bosch Performance CX.
All right, let's recap those results. Over at Hellhole, the bike reached the top in 1 minute and 24 seconds for a 12.9 mile per hour average. That mark is a little bit better than our eMTB average on this test by about 5 seconds. Then on the water tower time, the result again just edged out the average. It finished there in 3 minutes and 31 seconds, which is a 14.8 mile per hour average. That result beat out the others by about 8 seconds. So with the power on tap, especially that 85 Newton-meters of torque, it doesn't matter if you have a sharp climb in front of you or a long one. The motor will do a great job giving you just the amount of boost that you need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the ride quality section of our review on the Canyon Strive On. Oh man, it's a beautiful fall morning and I get to be out here riding bikes. So fun. On one of my favorite trails. So today we're going to talk a little bit about this bike, how it rides, how it climbs, how it descends, kind of the characteristics of what it's good at and what it could be better at, and the type of riders that might like this bike. So first off, let's talk about the heart of the eMTB, of this eMTB, which is the motor. This bike is powered by the Bosch CX4 motor, which you'll probably be able to find some smoking deals on bikes with this motor, because Bosch just released the CX5, which is going to be coming out on a lot of new bikes. Really excited to test that one as well. However, I will say that bikes with this older motor, air quotes older, I mean this still is a really good motor. It's got great power delivery, it's got a great app to customize the modes and tune it to your liking. It comes preset with 4 different ride modes, and I would say for 95% of people, those 4 they're great. You don't even need to mess with it. But as like with most of us and our bikes, we like to tweak stuff and try different things and just kind of customize it to how you like to ride. Whether that's optimized for, you know, a longer battery life or more power, and then also how you want that power delivered when you're pedaling. But at any rate, as we've talked about many times before, this Bosch motor is fantastic. 600 watts peak power, 85 newton meters of torque, and tried and true, really reliable. And as we've talked about before, with that motor, you know, there's a little bit more noise when you're pedaling as well as when you're descending. You get the, you know, the Bosch rattle when you're going downhill, not pedaling. And you can probably hear as I'm coming uphill that the noise is a little bit higher than some of the other motors on the market. But I will say, as much as I hate motor noise, and for that matter, noise on the bikes at all, I would say that you pretty much get used to the bike that you have. So it's funny because like the stuff that you notice only becomes apparent when you ride something else. So it's all pretty relative, and I think a lot of you would agree with that. You just kind of get used to what you got. So this bike comes with the, this one's got the 750 watt hour battery, which like with all of the Bosch bikes, is compatible with the 250 watt Power More range extender, so you can get 1,000 watt hours on the bike, so you can go for some super big epic rides on this bike. Oh man, Love this trail. So this bike, the Canyon Strive On, is more like the in the enduro category. It's got 160 mil of travel in the frame, paired with a 170 mil fork. The fork is a 38. The shock is a Float X. We had a little bit of a hard time. I shouldn't say hard time, it just took a little bit longer to kind of get this bike dialed in from a suspension standpoint. It felt a little stiff, and then we were kind of able to dive into it, play with the pressures, some of the settings. It came, the 38 Fox Sport came with one token spacer, which we removed. And after that, and then after playing with some of the air pressures, we've got it to feel pretty good. And I think with a lot of bikes, that's really, you know, there's going to be some trial and error to get it to kind of ride how you like it. So this bike comes from a manufacturer that is direct to consumer. So Canyon sells directly to end users without the bike shop being the middleman. And because of that, you're able to save some money with your purchase. So the spec that we have is one of the lower spec bikes. The brakes are SRAM BB8s. The drivetrain is a Shimano Dior, which for all intents and purposes work really well. This bike is a mixed wheel setup, 29-27.5, which I think really helps the agility and handling when you're talking about bigger e-bikes, especially when you get into longer travel. It just kind of helps offset some of the weight of a big e-bike. And it's funny because, like, when I first saw this bike and kind of was looking at setting it up, the bike itself looks really big and beefy. Like, it looks like it's going to be a really big, heavy bike, but it is not. It comes in at a very respectable weight, lower than a lot of other e-bikes that we've ridden and tested, and more along the weight of some of the higher end bikes with woo-wee. Oh, I love that part. Some of the higher end bikes that, you know, cost almost twice as much as this one, if not more, yet they come in around the same weight. This bike climbs really well. I mean, it's really comfortable to climb. I would say there's probably a lot of people that are like, it's an e-bike, right? Like, they all climb well. Yeah, they do. However, there are different characteristics to how they climb. And this bike is no different in that it has specific characteristics. I would say it's very agile, even though it's a pretty slacked out 63.5 degree head angle. Again, kind of lending itself to the enduro style of riding. And it's got the travel that you want and need when you're going down long, big, rough descents. but it doesn't really feel like it's a big burly beast on the slower sections of trails, and even for that matter on greens and blues. I love how this bike handles downhill. The one thing that I don't love is just all the rattle. There's a lot of noise. But if you're okay with that, you know, the 150, or excuse me, 160, 170 suspension design really does allow you to take up some big terrain. Now with that, one of the characteristics I've noticed on the downhill performance of this bike is that it's not quite as soft and supple. I hate that word, by the way. It's not quite as plush, or I don't know, just as soft as other bikes in this category. But it's got really good support as well. So even though, you know, it's not quite as soft when you're sending bigger jumps and drops and longer descents, you know, it's not going to fade. It's going to give you what you need to have a lot of fun on those types of trails, where some other bikes kind of have a compromise in one or the other category. This bike compromises that just on the one side. So I guess in conclusion, my thoughts on this are, it's just a really fun bike at a really good price, and even though you're not going to get the support from a bike shop on a warranty basis, you can still go through, you know, Bosch e-bike centers for that stuff, and you can still take it to your local shop to warranty. You know, if there's going to be aftermarket, you know, Shimano or SRAM or whatever components that need to be warranted or fixed or whatever, I mean, you can still take it to all of those shops to get your service. And unless you're kind of the do-it-yourself guy, really fun bike at a really great price.
All right, now that you're back from your long ride with Bryce, I'm gonna throw out some quick bullet points and sum up ride quality. So if it wasn't totally obvious by now, we are big fans of Bosch motors. They are consistently some of the better performers if you can tolerate a little bit of noise. Now, the rattle and whine have always been a thing, but I do feel the rattle seemed a little more noticeable here on the Canyon than it has been on some other bikes. It might have something to do with the chunky housing of the bottom bracket, who really knows? But if you can look past that, this is a terrific feeling and performing motor. The suspension is stiff and supportive. It is great for climbing and performs well on downhill, even if it isn't as cushy as some other setups. Now, our test bike originally came with an air spacer up front, and after ditching that, we really liked the feel of the total ride quality. More than anything, we were surprised the bike didn't feel cumbersome. The 38mm stanchions and its longer wheelbase make this bike seem larger than it really is to the eye. It had better than expected maneuverability. This is a reminder of something I said before, but the bike sizing runs on the higher side, and this is the first time I've ever said that I think I may have been better off on the medium than the large that we tested. So just make sure you look closely at the geo chart to match your preferences. And on a final note, I actually have a bit of a story. Sometimes people say they don't want a DTC bike because they're not sure who to go to for service. Canyon does pretty well in this regard. You can check their website for their network of mechanics, as they do have decent service coverage. I've also heard that shops that work on other Bosch motors shouldn't have any issues taking a look at this one too. I'm not entirely sure about that, but still it's worth a phone call to your local mechanic, and if you do have any issues with other parts of their bike, the Canyon team is really responsive. This is a pass-along media bike that we tested out. Every now and then that means something funny has been done to it, and we discover that throughout our testing. Fun for us, right? Well, with this one, we needed a replacement main pivot nut and screw. We talked to a nice guy at Canyon named Jake who had to search through a miscellaneous bin of parts. Then he found it and sent it to us via FedEx Express. Now, all of that was at no charge and without us playing the We Are E-Bike Reviewers card. That's just really great service and a vote of confidence for taking care of their customers in the future. Our team has really enjoyed our time on the Strivon CFR Underdog. It's got a high quality frame, the motor is superb, and the Geo and 160-170 travel are what you need for rowdy adventures. This is one that feels like it could rightfully hang with the big dogs, and doing so at a substantially smaller cost makes it a great look for those seeking a good blend of high quality and good value. That'll do it for this review. Let me know what further questions or comments you have on the Strivon CFR Underdog down in the comments below. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe. I'm Griffin with Electric Bike Report, and I'll see you on the next ride.